Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Gentech PC product showcase. In today's video we will be featuring the MSI GS63VR Stealth Pro. So this is the smaller 15.6 inch version of the GS73, which is of course the 17 inch version. What's new is we're now on the 7th generation Core i7 CPUs. We also have the Nvidia GTX 1070 MaxQ edition, which is a newer, less power consuming, lower heat producing version of the 1070. We will be doing today's review from the traditional outside in style. So we'll start with the outside of our laptop, look at the interfaces and the overall looks and size and weight of our unit, and then we'll move into the hardware, and of course at the very end we'll move into the disassembly. So on the outside you see that we have one very large oversized touchpad with integrated left and right clicks, a low profile chiclet style keyboard with the RGB LED backlighting. One nice thing to take note of is despite being in a 15-inch laptop body, we still have the full keyboard layout including the full number pad on the right hand side. Up above that we have our screen, 1920 by 1080p, and then above that we have the HD webcam and integrated microphones. And that pretty much covers all the outside overall. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at our interfaces. So connectivity features that we have here, starting from the right hand side we have our power button in the front right, followed by a standard USB 3.0 port. Then we have the mini Thunderbolt port using the USB 3.1 connection, HDMI output, mini DisplayPort output, and the DC port for running off of main power and charging your battery. Now as we swing around to the rear side of the unit, just like the GS73VR, there are no connections on the back, just the exhaust for the heat. And then moving to the left side. Over here we're going to find our Kensington lock port, the RJ45 for local networking, an SD card reader, 3 USB 3.0 ports, and our two 3.5mm audio connections, one for headphones and one for a microphone. Okay, time to hit the scales, and as you can see, the laptop is at 4 pounds and 3 ounces for its single carry weight. If we're going to take the power adapter along with us, we're going to add some extra weight. So the full travel weight is at 5 pounds and 14 ounces. So we're still just a little bit under 6 pounds for full carry weight on a very, very thin laptop. So it's going to be easy to fit into a bag and not too heavy to carry around. Now, as far as measurements go, here we are with a quarter and penny to show the scale. The standard ruler shows that we have under an inch in the total thickness in the rear side, and also very similar measurements to the front. For those interested in the GS63 versus GS73, the measurements come out to be very, very close as far as the thickness of the two. The main difference is, of course, going to be the size of the screen and the size of the body because of that extra screen real estate. Moving into the hardware device manager now so we can look at everything inside the computer. We have integrated graphics from Intel, of course the GTX 1070 from Nvidia, the 7th generation Core i7 Kaby Lake from Intel. Here is the monitor panel ID if you want to look up the information on that panel. And it does have the 120 Hz refresh rate. One thing that did not make it into the GS63VR was the Nvidia G-Sync technology. So if you're currently using that now or you were wanting to try it for the first time, just understand that this laptop does not offer it. And now that we've covered all of our interfaces and hardware in the laptop, it's time to move into our benchmarking section. One of our very first tests is going to be to take out our decibel meter and read how loud the cooling system is on our laptop. We're starting now with our control, so we have the laptop at a complete idle state just sitting in the room, so we can get those temperatures as they normally are and our noise readings as they normally are. So for those thermal readings, we're using the FLIR, and this has got a nice visual overlay that is built in with the infrared thermometer. So we can see what the laptop's doing as far as heat. Now, if you haven't seen one of our reviews before, the main thing is just to see that there's no hot areas that you're going to be touching that makes the laptop feel uncomfortable. Now, we want to make sure that the temperatures are not higher than they should be and that the system's getting rid of the heat. In order to be doing that, that means the hottest parts should always be where the exhaust is at. So for software options, we're going to just show you quickly the MSI Dragon Center. This is a nice heads up for many of your system features and current information. So here is like a performance meter showing the CPU, the disk, memory usage. Very similar to the performance monitor of Windows, but a lot prettier to look at. Jumping over to another tab, we have the LED wizard. This is where we control all of the backlighting for the keyboard. Now the GS63VR is zone controlled, so we have 3 major zones for color. So you can, of course, change the colors to different zone colors, but you cannot individually change the keys like you could in the GS73. So that could be one reason to get the GS73 over this model if you wanted that extra feature. The next tab is going to be the System Tuner. Inside of the System Tuner tab, you can perform a few preset tweaks to change how the system runs. Mostly your power levels are here, and of course the most important one that some people might take advantage of is the fan speed control. So you can definitely turn those fans on full blast if you're gaming or if you're in a quiet environment like a coffee shop and you want to put it on quiet mode. Take advantage of that. There'll definitely be some time that you can spend inside of the software to get used to every option in here and tweak them to your own preferences. Now it's time for us to move into the next order of business, and that's to start those gaming performance benchmarks. So while those are running, we're going to come back and take our noise test and our temperature test again. Now with the system under load, we can see those changes. Now these sound readings don't do a whole lot for you on their own as they're just numbers. The best way to use them is to look at other prospective laptops that we've reviewed that you might want to look at and see how their sound levels compare. So if you are looking for a quiet laptop, it's easy to determine if one laptop is relatively more quiet than another. Now rereading the temperature is the same way. Having the system under load now, we really put the cooling system to the test and make sure that all the heat being produced by the CPU and the GPU is taken care of and gotten out of the system. We see a little bit of hot areas here in the keyboard, and that is normal because the keyboard does act as a giant vent to help some of that hot air get out of the system. But of course the main business is in the back where the exhaust is being pulled in and then out of the system through the heat pipes and cooling fins. And temperatures are reaching over 50 degrees Celsius in the rear area right now with this benchmark. Now, one reason to get the GS63VR Stealth Pro is going to be that Nvidia GTX 1070 MaxQ edition. It promises most of the same performance as the original 1070, but to be running with less power, creating less heat, and producing less noise. And about that promise, here's how it measures up. A score of 12,003 on 3D Mark Firestrike. That's a very good score considering how thin, light, and portable this laptop is. The real thing to take in mind outside of just the score is going to be how did the temperatures do during that test. So here, next thing is going to be looking at the temperatures. On the CPU itself, we got a few differences between the different cores, the hottest one reaching about 92 degrees Celsius. And this is the new Generation 7 Kaby Lake CPU from Intel. The video card, a little bit further down, it only reached 70 degrees Celsius max. And that is actually much cooler than we saw the older 1070 running at. So that will reduce how much power is being consumed by the system and help it cool more nicely. We still have a few more benchmarks to run. We're going to be running Cinebench R15 right now. So once this benchmark finishes, we'll get some scores for the frames per second that we were able to render all of the information. And it gives us some performance scores based on our CPU as well. So with the OpenGL protocol, we got 97.02 frames per second. The CPU score was 724. The ranking came out on top here in the list that it gave us for the frames per second. And our CPU shows up somewhere in the middle of the scale. But it is actually being compared against other higher end desktop CPUs. Now with our benchmarks out of the way, we're moving into the last segment of the review, and that's going to be the disassembly. Taking apart the GS63VR is going to require taking out several small screws. The entire bottom panel comes off as a single piece. Now once you get the bottom panel off, the one thing you might notice right away is that you really don't have access to much as far as upgrades. You will get a nice view of the 3 cooling fans because of the system's very unique 3-fan cooling setup. You get access to the single 2.5-inch mechanical drive for your mass storage drive needs, the internal battery, and a couple of your interface cards for like your wireless configuration. Because of the lack of immediate access to most of the user upgradable stuff such as your SSDs and your RAM, the GS73 and GS63VR are one of the laptops we really do recommend that if you want to upgrade something from the stock configuration, to order it from us during your checkout process in the store. That way one of our skilled technicians can do the upgrade for you and we're able to cover everything under the warranty. If you did the changes yourself and accidentally broke something, it would technically void your warranty and that could lead to some trouble. So we'll go ahead and continue disassembling the unit. We'll take out that 2.5-inch drive. And we're going to remove all the other smaller screws so we can take the cooling system and the main board out. Again, we have several small pieces and screws everywhere right now, so this is definitely considered more advanced than the standard disassembly to get to these parts. Now once we can get that motherboard flipped over, that's where you're going to find your M2 SSD that your operating system's installed on and the system RAM slots. It's also a great view for now to take a look at the cooling system and how the heat pipes are connected. And that's pretty much all there is to the disassembly. There's not much further to go into it than this. And it's also going to bring us to the close of our video. So we just want to take the time to say thank you for watching our video. We hope that you found it entertaining and educational and that it might have answered any questions you had. Of course, if you have more questions, you may feel free to ask down below in the comment section. If you need one-on-one help, then feel free to contact us by phone or email. Now to get more information on the product, such as its current pricing and availability and the full system specs, go into the information section and click on the product page link. So once again, we just want to remind everybody that this was GenTech PC, and we'll see you next time.